guys so much for joining today here on the Revival Center YouTube page. We call this The Influence. I am joined today by Pastor Jason White. Won't you greet the folks?
Hello, hello. We hope everybody's doing well today. Looking forward to jumping into what we started last week.
Yep, absolutely. And if you are watching this live, behind the camera is Aaron Limbaugh. So if you would like to jump on there and chat and ask some questions, we would love to connect with you in any way through this through YouTube. So as you know, if you're watching this live and you're not watching the archive version, this is October of 2024, so we are in funny season. Funny season being political season. There's an election less than 30 days away. And so what we wanted to do is speak to that reality that we're all living in, that we are all inundated in with the news, the media, the advertisements, our family, our friends, everybody's talking about it, you know, of what's coming up and what's happening in our country, whether you're referring to Israel and the Middle East war that's going on over there right now, or you're talking about the hurricanes that are hitting America, or the election. There's a lot of different things that are happening currently as we're giving this teaching. But what we wanted to do is speak to this political environment that we're in, and how do we as believers and as Christians navigate these waters and these streams that we're living in. And we've entitled this teaching is simply, Are You Going to Vote in 2024? And I believe that we all have a responsibility to vote. There's a lot of people who have died and given their life on foreign battlefields in order for us to exercise that one right. And I do believe that it is important because we have to live under the rules and the regulations that these people make, whether we like them or we don't like the process. You may say you're not a political person, but you still have to live under the political realities that are shaped with elections. So with all that being said, I encourage you to go back and watch part one, because the way these teachings are that we do here on The Influence is that it's supposed to be one continuous thought, part one, part two, part three. And if you listen to any one part without listening to all of it, sometimes you can lose perspective and you can lose the context of what we're trying to explain, and things can be taken out of context sometimes. So just very quickly, by way of review from part one that we talked about, and again, you can click on that here on the channel, but we talked about how it's not easy to be a citizen in two worlds, meaning our born-again self that follows the teachings of Jesus Christ, but yet also we are a citizen of America. So those two realities exist in the heart of every believer. And so that's what we talked about in part one. So I encourage you to go back and to listen to it. We ended part one session by asking each other
Q&A.
Yep, some questions. Yep, and on how to address some of these things. And so again, I think you would find it helpful. Now let's get to the role of a biblical worldview. Now, whenever it comes to voting, biblical worldview. It's very hard for us to talk about a worldview and it not be insinuated or filtered through the political lens. It's very difficult to separate those two. But as an example, Pastor Jason, you know, what is our biblical worldview in terms of how you would explain that to somebody? How do we believe? What do we use that dictates as a Christian our value system? Where does that come from?
Well, with us, it's the Bible. It's the Word of God. Like every issue out there, whether it be climate, whether it be immigration, whether it be gender, abortion, everything that we believe in, our ideology comes from the Bible. Like our worldview is biblical, period. Yep. That's it. That's the foundation. So where would the worldview of a Muslim come from? I would say the Quran, or Quran, however you say it. But yeah, that's their foundation. So a lot of your countries and their religious affiliations kind of form their worldview on how they see these different issues.
That's right. You know, and then if we said, well, what is Marx's worldview? Where did his come from? Well, if you know anything about John Marx, he was an extreme atheist. And communism flowed out of his philosophical works. And really what Marxist is an extreme form of atheism. Yeah. It's like a combative form of atheism, which is why most communist countries do not allow religion, really of any kind, but especially Christianity. They do not allow religion in their country at all. And if there is some form of religion that the state allows, then it's watered down through the filter of the regime, through the filter of that state. Yeah. So it's not even the real religion. And that's across the board, whether you're talking about in North Korea, you're not going to find Buddhists in North Korea. You're not going to find Christians in North Korea. I mean, you might find underground churches, but I'm talking about overall, you know, allowing the free enterprise of religion in North Korea. You're not going to find that.
Especially to have an influence.
Right, yeah, no influence. Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, Muslim, none of it, because government. Marxist is an extreme form of atheism. And that's something to keep in mind as we talk about the political nature of things, because the person who's running for office has a worldview. The question is what dictates that person's worldview? Where does it come from? And that's important to understand as a born-again believer, that when you vote, and you should, when you vote, you have to ask yourself, the person that I'm voting for, what is the foundation of how they see the world? So let's get into it. You have two major political parties in our country. You have third parties, but for the most part, only a Republican or a Democrat is going to be elected in office. And that's just a reality. Yeah. So I never endorse candidates, but I certainly openly talk about platforms. The reason I do not endorse candidates is because I am not going to defend every stupid thing that a candidate says or does. I don't follow the candidate in that aspect. I don't worship a personality. I'm not impressed by that. But I do pay attention to what a platform believes in. So when you begin to examine the platform of the two major political parties, it's very simple to say that the Democratic platform is at odds with a biblical worldview.
100%.
Just whenever you look at abortion, just take that one example. And again, we talked about that in part one of this teaching, that we believe that abortion is sin. We believe that life starts in the womb at conception. But I don't know if but within the Democratic platform, they have enshrined this this practice of abortion within their platform to the point to where they celebrate it. It becomes a litmus test that if you are going to be a Democrat, then you have to embrace all forms of abortion. In fact, I mean, I hate to say this, but there are times that abortions are botched and the baby is born alive, and there are some governors in some states that do not want to give life-saving care to that child that survived a botched abortion. I can't get with that.
Isn't one of them our vice presidential candidate?
Yeah, in Minnesota. Yeah. I just can't get with that. Yeah. And if somebody says, well, you're being political, I say, no, I'm not. I'm following Psalms 139, verse 13 through 16, that tells me as a believer through my worldview, through the Bible, that life begins with conception. And so that puts me at odds, therefore, with that particular platform. In January of 2023, just about every Democrat House representative voted for this evil of abortion. It has become nearly impossible to find one Democratic leader within that platform who believes in the exclusivity of God's design for marriage. and being between one man and one woman. So not just the abortion thing, but traditional marriage. Why do I believe in one biological male and one biological female to be married? Because the Bible instructs that to me.
That's right.
It says that in Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. That's my worldview. It's not a political nature for me. It's just simply what I believe. The breakdown of the family is progressively causing the overall breakdown of America's society. And we may do a teaching on that one day as well, that as you see the family disintegrate, you begin to see the morals and the fabric of that family and of that community and of that nation also break down with it, and it does tremendous harm. For the society or a culture to flourish, there must be both a father and a mother to raise that child and to instill biblical morality into that child and to pass that on to the next generation. So with the rising prevalence of the alternatives to the God-designed family is bringing about more disarray and bringing about more chaos and confusion. And it is really one party that champions these abominations to the point, and here's where I take issue. They champion it to the point where they demand the entire culture at large to join in the celebration of these evil acts. That's what I take issue with. The intensity that you feel with me, if you know me personally, or if you attend this church, or if you follow what we do here, the pushback that you feel inside of me is not because I want to be controversial. It's not because I want to pick a fight necessarily. It's just that I refuse to bend my knee to these evils that's going on in our culture. And they're never going to stop until people like me and you bend our knee to what they believe. I don't believe that. And so that's the issue that we're dealing with in 2024. You take, for example, June is Gay Pride Month. I don't celebrate that. No. I will never celebrate that. The rainbow to me stands for Noah's flood and a promise from God never to destroy the earth again. So I will never participate in that celebration of that sin. Just not go do it. And so therefore the pressure is always going to be pushed back on people like myself. And including, but not limited to, of what a woman is. We talked about that. And, you have a Supreme Court justice who was nominated to the Supreme Court that could not explain the definition of what a woman is. Unbelievable.
It's even sad that we have to talk about these things, It's crazy.
It is. And then including the chemical castration of young boys and young girls right now that is being pushed by the liberal agenda within the Democratic Party. That leadership, they support and they affirm gender-affirming care is what they call it, but it is a whitewashed term used to mask the shockingly grotesque and brutal reality of self-mutilation and its consequences that follow from it. And the reason I talk like this and I speak on these issues is because I want the people who attend this church, who call me their pastor, their leader, I want to be on record stating the fact that this is wrong. Yeah. I want to be on record stating the fact that I was speaking out against it at a time when it's not very popular to speak out against it. I want to be on record because I do believe slowly, you got to really look for it, but slowly the tide is turning within the medical care, that what is happening right now is absolutely devastating the culture and society at large. There have been, believe it or not, reports coming out in Great Britain of the medical facilities and the medical doctors saying, we may need to put a pause on this, guys. We are doing pretty harmful things, because as time ticks on and more people have these surgeries, and then 10 years, 15, 20 years from now, you begin to see the devastating consequences of it and the ravishing of a society and of lives, innocent lives, because these things are happening when they're 12. there's going to be an extreme pushback and a blowback against it once you see how devastating it has been. I want to be on record now saying that I'm against it in all forms of it. And what has led me to that conclusion is my worldview of serving Christ. It is a moral conviction for us to stand up and to speak out on these issues, and there can be no lack of certainty about what is right or what is wrong. There is no gray area. When it comes to these issues, there is a right and there is a wrong, and it's incumbent upon us as ministers of the gospel and believers, born-again believers, to know the difference between what is right and what is wrong.
Yep.
So this goes against God's created design of man and woman of Genesis 1:27, and really should cease any discussion about who a born-again believer supports, what platform they support. This should not be a confusing issue for a born-again believer who follows the teachings of Jesus Christ, nor should it be dividing the church.
Right.
I don't understand why these issues divide you and me. I do not understand it. If it is a confusion issue, or if these things are dividing issues within the church, then we have to ask ourselves, why? Why is this dividing us? Why is it confusing? Because the scriptures are clear on these issues, and Jesus is clear on these issues when you read the plain text of the Bible.
Yep.
So without any commentaries, without any other kinds of preachers out there, if you just read the Bible, we would all come to the same conclusion that abortion is sin, that God only created man and woman, and that marriage is for a biological man, biological woman. You come to those conclusions on this plain reading of the text. So then, Pastor Jason, here's your turn. Why is it that there is confusion and division in the church over things that should be very simple?
Well, it seems to be that the church, some of the church, a lot of the bigger churches have let the left, let the woke agenda kind of creep into the church. And so there's this, this book that we have.
Show the people there.
Yeah, it's called Shepherds for Sale. It's how evangelical leaders traded the truth for a leftist agenda. This is what has led to the confusion. Mm-hmm. Megan Basham, I believe is how you would say her last name, has wrote this. Good read. We definitely, I would say I'd recommend reading it. But it talks about how the church has let the left infiltrate the church. It has let the agenda of the left, the woke agenda, and all these things mess with the issues that we believe is clear as black and white, like abortion, marriage, gender. And churches have started backing it, have started funding it, have started kind of pushing that as their agenda of more of accepting, instead of hitting it, like we left No Doubt, the Revival Center, no doubt, this is how we stand. But a lot of your churches out there, a lot of your larger churches are very fuzzy on a lot of these issues, and they're accepting. So I'm gonna touch a little bit more about the book, but in the book, Miss Megan Basham organizes the chapters. I'm sorry, my voice seems to be leaving me. Of the Shepherds for Sale, mainly into how evangelical leaders have done so in the areas of climate change. She addresses these issues in the book. Illegal immigration, the watering down of pro-life, what that means, COVID propaganda and suppression, critical race theory, and then the hashtag #MeToo and hashtag #ChurchToo, and then the drift on the LGBTQ issues. So I was going to address a little bit from the book, Pastor Jason. I was kind of going back through it, and one of the chapters towards the end of the book is called None Dare Call It Sin, and it's basically talking about the LGBTQ agenda, the platform, the push that we all feel so much, especially, I mean, we don't as much here because we are a little bit out from the cities and things like that, but I worked in Birmingham, and I can't tell you how many churches that I would ride by before I came full time here, and beautiful buildings, old churches, Methodist churches, and just been there for years, but draped with the pride flag. I saw a video not too long ago from one of them in Birmingham. I believe it's the Church of Birmingham. I don't know if it's Methodist, I don't know, Episcopalian, I don't know what it is, but a video got this little boy, you know, just a sharp video, and then all of a sudden he says in the video, at our church we call God she, and you know, if you're not careful, it's a wolf in sheep clothes. It's a wolf in sheep's clothes. Right. And that's what they're doing. They're infiltrating the churches, and they're pushing those agendas, and it makes it look very appealing. But it's wrong. The Bible is clear cut on what those issues are. So in this chapter, and I'm gonna throw blast because it kind of just blew me away when I read this. There's a pastor from Arizona who goes and meets with a well-known pastor in America. His name's Andy Stanley, pastor of North Point in Georgia, big church, right? Has big influence. And this pastor from Arizona was really excited about getting the chance to sit under an influential leader like Andy Stanley, but he didn't know him that well. So anyway, they're in this kind of round table meeting, dinner, and they're talking about different issues, and all of a sudden the issue of homosexuality comes up. And the pastor from Arizona says the conversation went left real fast, and that Andy Stanley was one of the ones, the leader of this church, North Point Church out of Georgia, who has 8-9 campuses, 30,000 people or more attend, says that he said that he would encourage any gay couple in his congregation to commit to each other. So instead of trying to address the issue, and once again, not that we love everybody, but there's an issue there. Yeah. Instead of trying to address the issue, he would say he would encourage them to commit more to each other. So this pastor, when that is said, says, just kind of does a what? To himself, and kind of feels the room change. Because everybody, or a lot of the people at the table kind of went, wait a minute, what did he just say? And so as it goes on, the conversation tends to gravitate more to that Stanley is accepting of the homosexual lifestyle in his church. And then later on at another conference, it's called the Drive Conference. It happened in 2022. Stanley says he went on to call 1 Corinthians 6, Leviticus 18, and Romans 1 clobber passages. He addresses the Bible and calls it clobber passages, echoing a phrase common among gay activists when referencing Bible verses that address homosexuality. At no point did he indicate that homosexual acts or desires were sinful.
That's right.
So, wolf in sheep's clothes. Yeah. Instead of addressing the issue. Now, let's be real. We've had homosexual couples come in, and we love them. But we're going to address the issue because it's an issue.
Yeah, you repent. That's how you handle that.
I mean, we all have sin, right? We were all saved from something, but you have to address it. You have, especially. It can't exist together. And so, and the chapter goes on about, throughout this entire chapter, about different churches, large churches with big influence, about how they are on the side of the LGBTQ agenda, and how they are letting that seep into their church and pushing that agenda to their congregation. And then you're seeing a congregation that is let's just be honest, they're woke. They're left. They're accepting instead of trying to change. And I read another part of the chapter where a couple had a son that came out as gay, and then later on, as the story progressed, they said, "Well, we're not here to try to change people. We're here to love them." Well, I disagree. we can't change anybody, but God can, and we believe in change. It's called sanctification. Right? I can't make you do anything, but I can pray for you, and I can talk to you, and I can advise you, and it goes back and forth, right? But to say that we're just here to love them, then that's accepting of that, and that goes against our biblical worldview 100%.
Yeah. And so how did these people begin to be influenced in a large way? Well, oftentimes you can follow the money. And there are entities that are actively seeking to influence these individuals like Andy Stanley. Whether you're talking about the Rockefellers or eBay Foundation, the person who founded eBay, or the Lillian Endowment and more, where they have funneled money to influence Christian universities, Christian think tanks, different entities, and if they make a donation of $100,000, to your nonprofit, well, then you're going to allow them to come and speak and be able to share their idea of the world, of whatever, how they look at it.
And you know why they're trying? And I know you do, but I'm trying to.
Yeah.
You know why? Because Christianity, true Christianity, is the last thing that is keeping this agenda from basically, I don't know, I have no other way to say it, taking over. The true Bible-believing people like yourself and me, and our church, and our people that we get the privilege of pastoring, and other places like us, that's the last stand against this agenda.
Yeah.
Because of money. You're exactly right. It's these people are looking and trying to find those that are about the dollar. And that's why it hasn't ran its complete course either yet, because there's still people that are true to their biblical worldview, and it's keeping that agenda from just taking over.
Yep. And so that's the reason these issues are such controversies in our church, in the church at large, and why it divides people, and why we can't all agree about certain things, is because it is an agenda that is purposefully being pushed, which is why we need to be so unified around what the Bible says and let our other differences lay to the side.
That's right.
What color the carpet is, and what painting a building or building a building or tearing down a building, things like that don't matter. Lay that stuff down to the ground, man, and let us unite around these principles that is espoused in the Scripture, because I trust you, the other side is united for our destruction.
Yep.
And so we must come together. We are way stronger if we are all together on this, for those who believe this way, together to try to go and win the hearts and minds of others, to evangelize, to outreach, to pray for. God will bring a sovereign move of God, but we have to be willing to be united in prayer and in effort to make that happen. So we got a little bit of time left that I want to go ahead and jump in and ask this question. We're not going to finish this question in this part 2. You'll have to come back next Tuesday, part 3, to hear a little bit more of this. But this is the question that I put to you. What would the church in 2024 say if this was the 1720s and the American Revolution War was just around the corner? So let that sink in for a second.
It's a big question.
All right. So what would this church in America, across the board, across denominations, what if this church in 2024 was moved to the 1720s?
What would it say?
What would it be preaching, and how would it be looking? What would the message be versus what the message was in 1720s? I think that's, that exercise, that mental exercise is very fascinating, because the question is would the 2024 version of what we call church in America stay out of politics? That's my question to you. Stay out of politics. Would it stay out of the controversies of that day? And there was a lot of them. Would they not lend a voice to the hot button issues of that day? like, what would be their approach? How would they handle the 1720s? Again, that was on the eve, just a couple of decades, on the eve of the American Revolutionary War. And what is fascinating and something that's not talked about a lot is that the Great Awakening that happened in the 1720s and the 1730s and the 1740s, the Great Awakening that you hear about a lot, actually sowed the seeds that produced the American Revolutionary War.
Yep.
It sowed the seeds. The preachers, the teaching, how they spoke to the issues of the day, it made people think, and they did not shy away from what they were dealing with. So we're going to leave you with that thought. You can ponder it.
Yeah, maybe challenge you to go do some research. Was the 1720 church quiet, or were they active?
That's right. Yep. And so it's going to be a fascinating teaching next Tuesday. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Pastor Jason, for bringing that insight with that Shepherds for Sale book. I would certainly encourage you to read it. It's very eye-opening of what's happening around us. And thank you, Brother Aaron, for being on the computer in the chat there. And so, hey, if you have not already liked the video, like it. If you have not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. It helps get this voice out there, this influence. And every time you like the video or you subscribe to this channel, you become a partner of this influence and helping us get this word out. So again, thank you guys so very much. We will, I guess, see you next Tuesday at 8:30 right here on the Revival Center Influence.